Meet face to face without travelling place to place.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0845 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Morning to you, 6 minutes after 9 on Friday, May the 9th. Well, he's successfully battled Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg in 2 debates. You have to say that everybody who called it as victories for Nigel Farage. You can say successfully battling all the leading political figures of the moment. But one thing Mr Farage couldn't beat today was the London traffic, Nigel. You experienced a few problems.
It's murder out there. It was yesterday as well, so I debussed south of the river and legged it over. And it's lucky that I'm so fit. I've looked after myself all these years, and here I am.
Yes, that's right. Well, it is a glowing testament to the level of fitness. Thank you for that. Sorry you're the wrong side of travel. Anyway, you're only a minute late, and let's get cracking. Your opportunities, of course, to put your calls, your questions to Nigel Farage, the leader of Ukip. And I need to remind you, we discussed the polls earlier in the week. They're not just coming up on the rails, they're storming up on the rails. And you can count in days now the big vote. Remember, lbc.co.uk has details of all the other parties. Anne's in East Sussex. You're through to Nigel Farage. Anne, you're on the radio. Go ahead.
Oh, hello, Nigel.
Morning.
I would just like to say, there has been a report earlier on the week that younger people don't or not engaged in wanting to vote. Why not make compulsory voting? Obviously, you'd need to have exceptions for people who are in hospital or nursing homes, etc. But why not set up a scheme like you have in Australia, whereby mobile voting units go around such places to enable the elderly or infirm people who want to cast a vote? Because with the low turnout at the polls, I think if people don't bother voting, then I don't think they have the right to complain about which government's in power.
Let's get Nigel onto this.
I take the view that I don't want the state to tell us what to do, including telling us whether we have to vote or not. So I think we should be at our liberty to decide whether to exercise our vote or not. And I have to say there is a more urgent, pressing priority than considering compulsory voting or considering reducing the voting age to 16, as they're doing in Scotland for the referendum, and that is the scandal of postal voting. The Blair government opened up postal voting, and for the first 7 years you could apply for a postal vote without even proving your identity. There is postal voting fraud going on a third world scale in this country. And that's
you are sure of that?
I know it. I know it. And I've seen... the last by-election for Westminster was the Wythenshawe by-election, right? Now, the nominations for candidates closed on the 29th of January, and on the 1st of February, the postal votes landed on the mat. There was no time. This happened to be a Labour controlled, but it could have been Lib Dem or Conservative equally. No time for a proper debate, and frankly, almost pointless running the by-election. On top of that, if you look at the work journalist Andrew Gilligan has done in the East End of London, particularly in Tower Hamlets, and those studies speak for themselves. There are all sorts of false names on the register. Let's deal with that first.
And is there a role for postal voting?
Yeah, I think people who are very elderly and infirm, or who serve in the army or work overseas, should have a postal vote.
Okay, it just needs to be much tougher.
Absolutely.
All right, okay, and thank you. John's in Plumstead. John, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Yeah, morning, Nick. Good morning, Nigel.
Morning.
Yeah, Nigel, I think that one of the worst things that you can be called is a racist, and I just wondered how it feels to be called, to be tarred as a racist by so many people, even like people like, not being funny, but James O'Brien. They seem to want to tar you as a racist. I know that can feel horrible myself when you're not a racist. I just wondered, I think you're doing absolutely brilliant, and I just wondered how it feels to be keep getting called a racist.
Yeah, this is the political class clubbing together, using their mates in the media, and doing anything they can to stop the Ukip charge. And because we've got a few idiots in our party, as by the way does every other party, somebody in some part of England says something stupid or offensive on Twitter at midnight, and this is held up as being representative of the view of the party. We are a non-racist, non-sectarian party, and 2 nights ago in London we had a big get-together of all of our ethnic, Indian, West Indian candidates on a stage, and these people wouldn't have joined UKIP or wouldn't be standing for UKIP if they thought that. And actually, interestingly, as a party, we're now getting growing support amongst the ethnic communities. So I hope that those images from the platform the other night will stop elements of the press and our opponents in politics throwing this label at us.
While it is, stay on the line, John, back to you in a second. While it's undoubtedly true, of course, that all the other parties have had their problem elements, is it fair, Nigel Farage, you've had more than the others? It's disproportionate.
No, I mean, you know, in March, a Lib Dem councillor in Surrey didn't say something nasty. He was convicted of racially aggravated assault. They didn't make the national press.
So why are they focusing on UKIP?
Well, of course, that's because we are challenging the establishment, and this is what the establishment does. I mean, the Conservatives in Lincolnshire have a bloke standing for them week after next who's a well-known BNP activist. You haven't read about that. Imagine one of mine. I mean, one of mine had been a former BNP officer. I mean, they'd be hell to pay. So I think scrutiny is fine, but it should be applied evenly across all of the parties, and it is not.
Quick response.
Can I say one more thing?
Go on, John. Yep, go on.
Yeah, I think it would be really, really brilliant, Nigel. I think you'd be even more of a stand-up geezer if, to be honest, like James O'Brien, I think he's a good presenter, but I think that if you and him could get together and properly debate things instead of like silly Twitter things like James done recently, I think that would do us much, much more of a favour than backstabbing.
Well, I am sworn a bit to Nick Ferrari, but if he's prepared to lend me out,
I'll allow you to see other men.
Very good of you.
We'll see what we can arrange.
There's a challenge to James O'Brien. Get me on the show. Let's have it out face to face.
John, thank you for that. Herbie's in Harrow. You're on the radio, Herbie.
Good morning, Nigel. Good morning. Nick. Nigel, if on the 22nd of May, UKIP is successful in electing a lot of councillors, and bearing in mind there have been new people that have never held office before, will you be conducting a sort of like a meeting to make sure that they're going to be running the council correctly, given the guidance they need to show that UKIP is an electable party and that they will carry out the deeds of the people?
I mean, last year we had 147 county councillors elected, which stunned everybody, including me. And there was a presenter on one of the shows said to me, "But Nigel, your people have got no previous experience of local government." And I said, hurrah! And a year on, we fundamentally changed the balance of government in Norfolk and Cambridge and other parts of the country. And our councillors have the highest attendance record of any political party in the country. So there is now a little bit of experience at district and county council level, and I think one of the most important things we do is with the new councillors that get elected, we give them a bit of training, but not too much training, because I think the great thing is we want people in politics who act on instinct, and we are not, as a national party, going to whip our councillors and tell them what they should and shouldn't do. They'll be free to be independently minded and make up their minds on the issues that affect things locally.
Quick response from you, Herbie.
So that will give the elected people that will get elected some sort of confidence to know that they can go ahead and be conducting what the UKIP party stands for, and to get that message over. Because if they go there willy-nilly and not have the experience, in other words, you're going to do some mentoring to the new elected people. Because if UKIP get it right now, Nigel, I'm sure next year, you've got the general election as well, people will feel that we're a credible party to be able to then hold power as well in Westminster.
Well, in some ways, Herbie, although it's the European elections that we're focusing on, and I've talked about causing an earthquake in British politics if we win them, longer term for UKIP, and in terms of what we do in parliamentary elections next year, you could argue that the council seats are even more important, because if we win clusters of seats in constituencies, it changes the whole dynamic under first past the post and makes us look like potential winners in our target seats.
All right, thank you for that. Let's go to some of the emails that are coming in. This comes, this comes from Rachel in Kent. Should we be told if our meat is halal? Have you ever eaten halal meat, Nigel Farage?
We all have. We all have. It's everywhere. I mean, over half the meat that is sold in this country is halal meat. Funny though, isn't it? We have this debate about labelling. It isn't the British government. It isn't DEFRA that decides how we label food. It isn't the British government that decides the rules for slaughtering animals. It's all done in Brussels. So we have these debates, and we're shocked that horse meat turns up in the food chain and everything else. The European Union looked at this in 2011. There was a big debate in the Parliament as to whether we should have much clearer food labelling, and the European Parliament decided, no, we're not going to do that. I think, even though we've transferred the ability to do this to somewhere else, even as members of the EU, they wouldn't stop us if we wanted to label meat. I mean, I've campaigned for the Jewish community to go on with their method of ritual slaughter, because I think we have to have religious tolerance. But what we don't want is one particular form of meat production imposed upon everybody else. So I think actually, for once, we should say we don't need Brussels to do this. We can sort it out for ourselves, and let's have clear meat labelling.
So halal meat, kosher meat, whatever other meat.
Yeah, and who could possibly object to that? Thing is, of course, it's really about economics, This isn't... I don't believe... this is about some of the big chains being terrified of the Muslim community and what they might say. You look at it. You can import lamb from New Zealand at an incredibly cheap price, and a lot of big chains use that lamb because of the price. That's halal meat. Why? Because their biggest markets are in the Middle East. So this is more about economics, I think, than it is about religion.
And the stunning debate, i.e. whether the animal should be pre-stunned or not, you stick with the religious code here. If the Muslims want to do that, if the Jewish people want to do that.
To be absolutely honest with you, Nick, if any of us, really studied how our animals are taken to slaughterhouses, now driven increasingly long distances because we've closed down 1,000 abattoirs in Britain directly because of EU rules, I think we'd all be shocked at the ways in which our meat are produced. One of my MEPs, a farmer, went to a kosher slaughterhouse, looked at the whole process and said he was impressed by it. And I'll take his judgment. All
right. Nigel Farage back for more calls and questions in a moment. He had to jog across a bridge to get here. Let him have a slurp of coffee while we get a travel update.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton. From a great night's sleep to the perfect hearty breakfast.
You're finally home. Doesn't feel like home. Front door, got your keys. Your new keys, new locks, still not used to them. You have to go in. What if someone's already in? Just open it. Last time you opened it, it's not going to happen again. It might happen again. It's fine. It was fine before.
At ADT, we understand the real cost of burglary is not just what they take, it's what they leave behind. That's why our monitored alarms provide peace of mind from as little as £99 for installation. Don't wait. Search ADT to book your free security survey today. ADT. Always there. Subject to a 36-month contract and monthly monitoring charge. Visit adt.co.uk for details and terms and conditions.
118434, the handy number for handy numbers.
Calls cost 55 pence plus 99 pence per minute from a BT landline. Other networks vary, and mobiles cost considerably more.
Many have debated whether banks have been doing enough to support businesses through lending. I'm joined by David Turner of WBC Automotive. Tell us about the idea you put to Barclays.
We were looking to move from our building because it was so energy inefficient. Barclays provided our mortgage to actually build a brand new building.
So as you're growing, does that bring more challenges?
Yes, we need to purchase more parts to repair our vehicles. Barclays were able to offer us a financing solution that enabled us to release cash from the invoices.
If you're in business, visit barclays.co.uk/funding.
All lending products are subject to status and application. Security may be required.
I'm Andy McCall in the LBC Travel Centre. Still the problems at Dartford and Kent, the A226 Home Gardens. It's shut between Overy Street and Hythe Street with a car that's overturned near to the Waitrose car park. M3, still delays coming north from junction 3 to 2. That's backshot in the M25. Lane 3 still blocked after an accident. At Barton Mills in Suffolk, the A11 is still a lane blocked southbound. It's after an accident at Five Ways. Cardiff Bay, an accident on the Central Link at the Queen's Gate roundabout. And in Cheshire, delays on the M62 westbound, 8 to 7, Burtonwood Road and Rainhill Stoops. That was after an accident and a closure earlier on. In Aberdeenshire, the A920 partially blocked between Huntly, the A96, and Dufftown, the A941 after a lorry overturned. In London on the tubes, there will be delays on the Piccadilly line after signal problems. London Midland and Virgin between Euston and Milton Keynes up to half-hour delays. Keeping you moving. Next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With Go-To Meeting. Work smarter with a free 30-day trial.
You're finally home. Doesn't feel like home. Front door, got your keys. Your new keys, new locks, still not used to them. You have to go in. What if someone's already in? Just open it. Last time you opened it, it's not going to happen again. It might happen again. It's fine. It was fine before.
At ADT, we understand the real cost of burglary is not just what they take, it's what they leave behind. That's why our monitored alarms provide peace of mind from as little as £99 for installation. Don't wait. Search ADT to book your free security survey today. ADT. Always there. Subject to a 36-month contract and monthly monitoring charge. Visit adt.co.uk for details and terms and conditions.
If you lose your dog, the DVLA can't help. If you lose your glasses, they can't help. Although it's worth checking the knot on your head. But if you lose your driving licence or if it's stolen or defaced, the DVLA will come to your rescue. All you have to do is go online and you can get a replacement quickly and conveniently. Just go to direct.gov.uk/replace licence.
Imagine you run a fleet of vans and one's off the road. Imagine your customer waiting for his express delivery and realising that it won't arrive, ever. Imagine his angry red face shouting. Now imagine you run a fleet of vans with Volkswagen commercial vehicles and one of them is off the road and it's immediately replaced by the same type of vehicle. Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles, the power of partnership. Search Working With You to find out more. Manufacturer warranty work only, subject to availability. Terms and conditions apply. Go to volkswagen-vans.co.uk/workingwithyou for details.
With BMW Economics, the BMW 520d M Sport Saloon includes BMW Business Advanced Navigation, which detects jams and even works out alternative routes. What you won't need help working out is just how good the payments are, from only $339 a month plus deposit. To find your local dealer, visit bmw.co.uk. 48-month hire agreement from BMW Financial Services GB Limited, 4889 initial payment, subject to status and available for new vehicles at participating BMW dealers, UK only. Guarantees may be required. Mileage and other conditions apply.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Let's get a couple of emails into the conversation now. Dan in Dartford says, I've loved watching you on those TV debates. One was done by Nick Ferrari. When are you going to be debating David Cameron? When can we see the Prime Ministerial debates? Well, now, where are we? We've heard from David Cameron that he's ready. This is rather strange. He's ready to do 3 debates, one of which you can feature in, I understand. Is that right? There's a 2-3-5 formation.
But they're thinking about it. And they won't say anything until after the party conference season in October, and then they'll decide it's not a very good idea. He doesn't want to have a debate with me. Of course he doesn't.
Why?
Because he knows that he... there are 2 issues on which he can't win. One is the European question, the promise of a referendum. 5 years ago, this bloke won the European elections, giving us a cast-iron guarantee that if he ever became Prime Minister, there'd be a referendum on the Lisbon Treaty and let us down. But the big one, Nick, and the one that no one wants to debate, and the reason they're throwing all this abuse at us, is this. It is completely pointless to talk about immigration figures and targets, all the while we're members of the European Union, when we have a total open door to nearly 500 million people. And we cannot control the numbers that come. And if you look at just how bleak things in the Eurozone now are, they're going into deflation. You've got youth unemployment approaching 60% in 2 of those countries. And if I was living in on the med and young and out of work, I'd come to London too. And I'm not blaming the people, but they are very, very fearful. You know, Andrew Green of Migration Watch says at least another 500,000 will come in the next 5 years. That's conservative. At the moment, 4,000 a week are coming from the European Union and settling. And Mr. Cameron does not want to have that debate with me head to head.
And lastly on that, how confident are you then? Because we have to say that it was called, both the debates regarding Europe were called in your favour. You're confident, whether it was 2, 3, 5, whatever, that you would trounce David
I don't think it matters. I quite honestly, Nick, it's not me.
You want to do it?
Yeah, of course I want to do it. Of course, and I'm hugely grateful, you know, to you and Nick Clegg for kicking all that off last month. And I mean, it's done UKIP more good than anything. So thank you. But it wouldn't matter, Nick, if I was in those debates or anybody from UKIP was in those debates. We have an unarguable, logical point that you cannot control these things. You can't plan primary school places. You can't plan A&E facilities if you have an open door to lots of poor countries.
Right. John's in Croydon. Let's get the calls going again. John, you're through to Nigel Farage. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Farage.
Morning.
Can you tell me, considering that the EU has trading pacts with Canada, South Africa, virtually the whole of the rest of Africa, South America, great swathes of Asia, and we have just had a large trade delegation to India, why does the UKIP keep on lying about the fact that we're unable to trade because of with other countries because of our membership of the EU?
OK, well, let's get this absolutely straight, shall we? We are forbidden, banned, barred from entering into our own trade negotiations with any part of the world. We cannot do it. It is done on our behalf by an unknown Belgian bureaucrat. And that is membership of this outdated model that is called a customs union. And the argument from Nick Clegg in the debate that we had, which Nick here hosted, the argument was you have to be part of a big bloc to get on and make your own trade deals in the world. Iceland has a population of 1/3 and signed their own free trade deal with China last year. And Switzerland, which is a very small country by population, they on their own have negotiated more free trade agreements around the world than the European Union has been able to do. And I just think that our leading politicians in Britain just somehow don't believe in this country, don't believe in us as a people, and are happy to contract out important things like our trade relationships.
Quick response, John.
Total nonsense.
Well, it's true.
Iceland's the only European country which has got a trade pact with China. Switzerland is professionally neutral anyway, so wouldn't do it. And also, what are the problems that have arisen because we are unable to have our own trade pact? As I said, we've just had a huge trade delegation to India. Are you telling me that that trade delegation is unable to negotiate any trade? We've had a huge delegation to Brazil.
Hang on, let Nigel Farage talk.
John, I am. The Prime Minister, Vince Cable, Uncle Tom Cobley and all, even his hairdresser went, and they all go to India and tour around the place and have a lovely time, and they're not able to put on the table the one thing the Indian government wants, which is a trade deal with this country. And I think we must be mad to have turned our backs on 2 billion people that live in the Commonwealth, that speak English, that have common law. The opportunities for British trade outside of the cloying European Union are, I think, tremendous.
All right, thank you for that. We move on. Edward in Winchester. What restrictions or safeguards need to be put in by the British government if the AstraZeneca Pfizer deal was to go ahead?
We have now gone through a week of utterly farcical debate where the government say one thing and the coalition partners say another, and Labour say something, and is it in British interests or isn't it not in British interests, and who should do what, and should the shareholders have a say or the government have a say? Can we please get to the truth? It's irrelevant what anybody in Britain says. This is a European Union competence, and the only person that will decide whether or not Pfizer takes over AstraZeneca is an unknown man called Mr. Illumina, who you've never voted for and you can't remove. And still we go on with this farce. Oh, well, Europe's only a peripheral issue. It doesn't really affect this country. 75% of our laws are made in Brussels. We govern from Brussels. Our country has been surrendered to a bunch of bureaucrats, and I want it back.
And how would that actually affect, in simple terms, the AstraZeneca Pfizer deal, then, Nigel?
Well, I don't know. It depends on...
You said it would be decided by that man from Europe.
Yeah, I didn't say what his decision would be.
I see. But how does he enjoy that level of power, then?
Because we've transferred competence, not just for our trade deals with India, as I talked to John about in the previous phone call, but we've transferred the ability for our own takeovers panel to make decisions like this.
All right, this comes from Simon in Birmingham. Did you laugh at the Labour Party political broadcast, the way they demeaned your opponent, Nick Clegg?
I don't know what game they're playing, but this is the second broadcast the Labour Party have put out, and unless anyone's noticed, we're less than a fortnight away from a European election, and in both of those broadcasts, it's been an EU-free zone. They're not even mentioning the European question. They're talking about the cost of living, totally ignoring the fact that our food bills and our energy bills are massively higher directly as a result of European protectionism and rather ridiculous, in my view, wind energy policies.
If it means, Nigel Farage, that going into elections they're going to play the man rather than the ball, how would you respond? Because they may well come after you.
Oh, well, I'm sure they will. But I think that... when you sink to that level, it shows you can't have much confidence in your own arguments.
Jonathan's in Wendover. You're through to Nigel Farage. Jonathan.
Morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
I think that Ukip has been very useful at putting pressure on the other parties. In fact, I'd like to see it pushing a question on the 2015 ballot paper of saying, would you like whoever wins to give you an in-out referendum? So just asking the question, would you like it? But what concerns me isn't UKIP a wasted vote? I mean, you don't even have a single MP, and I really want some suggestion from you that you have bigger ambitions, because so far all I'm hearing is protest.
Well, no, it's not just protest. I mean, come on, be fair. You know, I've talked about our role outside of European Union. I've talked about how we can reinvigorate manufacturing industry by lowering energy costs. I've talked about our global role in the world. You know, this isn't just... me shouting at Herman Van Rompuy, even though he might deserve it. So, there is a positive element to what we're doing here. And just remember, last year in the English county elections, we got nearly a quarter of the vote, won nearly 150 council seats. I believe We're going to win hundreds of council seats on May the 22nd. We have a by-election in Newark that'll take place on June the 5th. Now, I know the Tory majority is huge, but I think we are now getting to a position where you can actually say in our target constituencies, if you vote UKIP, you will get UKIP.
An email, Dave, today we hear HMRC can raid our bank accounts at will. Do they whip money out of Vodafone or Tesco account when they suspect they need a tax contribution? No. Will you do something to level the playing field?
I believe...
Do you support this HMRC initiative?
It's appalling. I believe in the principle of innocence before guilt. And what the tax man now does is he sends you a demand and says, you owe me this money, you're guilty, prove to me your innocence. And now we're going to give them the power, not just to send us a demand and threaten us, but to take it straight out of our bank accounts. It mustn't be allowed to happen.
All right. Tracy in Hertfordshire, should women be in frontline military roles?
It's interesting, this one. I mean, if you think back to the defeat of Nazism, women played a huge role in the front line. Not in our army, not in the American army, but in the Russian army. They drove tanks, they flew fighter aircraft. Women were in the front line in the key battle against Nazism. If women are physically fit enough and strong enough and have the upper body strength to be on an equal par with the men in the infantry or in a tank corps, then fine.
Time for two more. Paul's in Stoke-on-Trent. You're through to Nigel Farage. Paul.
Morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
I want to ask you a question. Would you stand the next year's election if you missed the European elections?
Would I stand if I...
Next year's election, general election, if you miss out on the European elections?
I'm going to stand in the general election next year at the head of a UKIP team, regardless of what happens in 2 weeks' time.
Right.
Sorry, you're going to stand, what, for election to Parliament?
Yes.
You will seek a constituency next year?
Yes.
Do you have your eye on any particular part of the country at the moment?
Several.
Would you like to... This is like some quiz. Would you like to share with me some of those?
Very sweet of you, Nick, but no.
But I noticed that one of the reasons you had concerns over Newark, you said it's not a part of the country you know particularly well. So
I'm going to be standing somewhere in the southeast of England.
So Kentish or something like that?
That's where I'm from.
Okay. All right, last one comes in from Pierre in Kent. I've saved this to last. Mr. Farage.
What have we got here?
It is the Eurovision Song Contest this weekend. Do you watch it and how much do you enjoy it?
I absolutely hate it. But I must say, in the years when Terry Wogan was the compere, it was actually laugh-out-loud stuff, the way he just mocked and parodied the whole thing. But to see the level of prejudice that is now levelled against us at the Eurovision Song Contest, and then to believe that Mr Cameron is going to go to Brussels and renegotiate a good deal for us, it's really quite funny all round.
You don't even watch it. Nigel, thank you for jogging across the bridge. Thank you very much indeed. Nigel Farage, UKIP leader, appearing here, of course, on LBC. Just a reminder, you go to lbc.co.uk for all the candidates, all the details of all the parties in the upcoming elections. News is next.
Good morning, I'm Lisa Aziz. UKIP leader Nigel Farage has told LBC postal vote fraud is going on a third world scale.
The Blair government